And on this Sunday night, let's analyze everything around these Texans with Zack Tawatari and former Texan Seth Payne from SportsRadio 610. Seth, a peaceful Sunday for you?
It was a peaceful Sunday. I got to watch football in London with one of the worst offensive performances anybody's ever seen in the NFL in decades out of the New York Jets. I got to watch the future opponent, the Seahawks, dismantle the Jaguars. And I've had a great Sunday so far. Thank you.
All right. Well, now the emoji which best describes how we're feeling after the Texans' first 5 games. There's the board. Seth, you're up first.
I guess I wanted to do an all-encompassing reaction for the entirety of the 5 games and how I felt. So I'll go with the one that looks a little bit like, is it the upset stomach emoji? Is it dyspepsia emoji? Whatever it was, because it felt like I had taken into a bite into a piece of chocolate over those first 3 weeks and it's like some nasty liqueur tasting chocolate. And possibly rancid as well. I didn't expect the offense to get off to as abysmal as a start as it did. And yet, then I remembered in games 4 and 5 that there are other chocolates to be eaten in this box of chocolates. So the entirety of it was I was a little bit shocked, but these last 2 weeks have been good.
I'm going to go with this one also, Seth. I'm going to call it unsettled. That's because, yes, the Texans scored over 40 points in this past game, but this reminds me a lot of last season when the Texans scored over 40 against the Patriots, and that's the only time they would do it all year. I'm still concerned.
Is it okay to go with this one right here? Because when you look at the issues that this team we thought they may have entering the season, and in some ways, I don't know if they were addressed as well as they could have. I think that that's a possibility, but ultimately, I'm going to go this as well, because when you start out 0-3, that is the feeling, and certainly it's gotten a little bit better, but this is the feeling or the look you have after finishing or starting the season 0-3. So that's the emoji reactions, and now it's time for the play of the week. And now let's talk about the Seahawks and Jaguars. How Seattle won on Sunday, does that change your opinion at all of this upcoming Monday night matchup?
The biggest thing that I was concerned about watching the Jaguars game was that Trevor Lawrence was sacked 7 times. It was almost literally every single time Trevor Lawrence was throwing the football, he was getting hit. And I think there were times where he could have gotten rid of the ball quicker. CJ's gotten a lot better at that over the last couple of weeks. But some of the things that have been the vexation of the Texans' offensive line over these past 2 years, defensive line games, when tackles and ends are running twists without a blitz, they were really effective with that against the Jaguars. So that's a little bit more on my radar right now. The other big thing is just, hey, this isn't a big news bulletin or anything, but Jackson Smith and Jigba, the wide receiver, is really, really good. And the Texans this year have seen, hey, they struggled versus Puka Nacua. They did a pretty good job versus Zay Flowers, except for that 155-plus yarder. But Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be a huge, huge challenge for that secondary.
Man, it was something. One thing that when I looked into the box score, Seattle was 1 of 12 on third down when it comes to third down efficiency. Yeah. So when I look at that, I said, wow, that's like Texans-ish. So yeah, that's one thing that stood out to me. But when I look at the defense and what Seattle was able to do, my opinion really hasn't changed, because I thought that this was going to be a tough game regardless when it was played. And then now when you add in how the Texans are playing, this is going to be a tough game a week from Monday.
It's concerning for me because of exactly what Seth said. The 2 things that the Texans have struggled with is limiting explosive plays and protecting their quarterback. 2 things that we know Seattle is capable of putting pressure on Houston with. So that's what concerns me. I don't really think anything changed for me going into this matchup. It's just more that I'm on alert now because of what we saw in this previous game.
You know, the one thing about that game was that you could see Trevor Lawrence, man, he makes some beautiful throws, but he is just not consistently accurate, and he leaves so many easy plays and easy throws on the table. You know, people will point out that his receivers have a bunch of drops. Trevor Lawrence makes it hard for the receivers to catch footballs because they're very rarely put in precisely the right spot. So when CJ's on his game, I think there are opportunities versus that Seahawks secondary. They were very banged up today, and Trevor Lawrence, took some shots early and had some success, but the Seahawks, to their credit, figured it out and kind of figured out a way to patch up some of the backups they had playing on the back end. So the health of the Seahawks defense is going to be a big X factor going into this game.
And now here's an interesting topic. Which Texas team is better? Is it the Cowboys or the Texans, Seth?
All right, okay. Here's what we have to do. We just look at the four main units on the team, the offense for both teams, the defense for both teams. The Texans have an awesome defense. The Cowboys have an awesome offense. Texans offense has improved, I think. They'll face a test this week, but the only one abysmally bad unit between those two teams is the Cowboys defense, which is bad and getting worse somehow. So just by virtue of the Texans not having anything nearly as bad on their team as the Cowboys defense currently is, which, hey, turns out that getting rid of Micah Parsons isn't all that easy to fix when you're already a bad defense with Micah Parsons. So I'll say it hurts me to say this, Dallas, and how much I love you, but the Texans are obviously the better football team.
The Texans have a near elite defense, and for me, that is the one thing that certainly puts the Texans ahead of Dallas is just the defense that Houston has.
I feel like I have to point out that we shouldn't be having this. We shouldn't be having to have this conversation, right? Why are we having a discussion about who's relatively worse, whether it's the Texans' improving offense or the Cowboys' bad defense? The Texans weren't supposed to have bad anything this year, but here we are.
Now let's focus back to the Texans. GM Nick Caserio this past week says he breaks a season into quarters, which is no great revelation. But when you look at the next 4 games, what is your best guess for the win-loss record for the Texans, Seth?
My best guess would be if I had to handicap it, I think 2-2. I think there's a really good chance they end up 3-1, partly because attrition is starting to take place. I mean, the 49ers lost Fred Warner today to an atrocious injury. I think the Texans versus the Jaguars is going to be a much different matchup this next time around, because we've seen that Trevor Lawrence previously has had good little spurts when he gets a new coach, but then over time the coach starts to realize, okay, this guy's got a ceiling on just what he can and can't do. And I think we might be starting to see that already in Jacksonville. So that's flipped me towards feeling a lot better about that second Jaguars game.
I had thought 2-2, but Seth brings up a great point about Fred Warner. 3-1 is sitting right there for the Texans if they can take it.
It's sitting there, but as we've seen with this team over the last 2 seasons, they failed to capitalize when they really need to. This is the stretch of games that really could define their season because they're playing like 3 decent teams, right? So they do have the opportunity to go 3-1, but, you know, going 2-2 or 1-3 is pretty much going to take them out of a lot of conversations, I think.
You know, the big thing about this next 4-game stretch is that they've got a 3-game home stretch, and that home field advantage for the pass rush versus whoever's playing quarterback for the 49ers, a Broncos team that really got away with. Bo Nix got lucky today that Justin Fields was on the same field as Tim, because Bo Nix wasn't so hot over there in London either. So I think the pass rush during that 3-game home stretch versus those quarterbacks, specifically the 3 or 4 quarterbacks that might play, I think that's going to be a huge advantage, even though they're facing pretty stiff competition.
All right, we will dive into the matchup against the Seahawks next week on Sports Extra. But right now, time to say goodbye to Seth. Seth, thanks for joining us as always here on Sports Extra.
Thank you. And I lied earlier. I was miserable today with no Texans game. I did not relax at all. I didn't know what to do with myself. My wife got so sick of me.